everybody. Welcome back. And today we're joined with a very special guest.
Hi everyone, my name is Kat. I'm a friend of Krista's and a former classmate. We took art history classes together. Um,
A
I
couple
love art
other ones.
history. Mhm.
We took like a couple other classes together too.
That is also true. Yes, like
We,
Roman philosophy, a lot of classics. Really good.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Which is strange. But what is your connection to art history?
Well, I am a huge fan of art history. I had a minor in it.
Okay.
And also I am a frequent museum goer, so I love just, looking at art, analyzing it, learning what like the context and stuff behind it, how it's made, all that stuff.
What or who are some of your favorite artists, or do you have like what is like your favorite piece, like your favorite painting or something that you studied in art history? I know that's like a really loaded
That's
question.
a really hard question. Oh my goodness. Ah, favorite artists first, I would say currently. I've been really into Hilma af Klint lately and
Okay.
her abstract paintings and stuff like that, her Swan series. Um, in terms of paintings, my favorite painting, that's a really hard one. But whenever I think of a really interesting painting that I've studied within my academic career, it's sort of morbid, but I would have to say the execution of Lady Jane Grey by Paul de la Roche. Um,
Okay.
it's when I was taking a British art history class. And then my professor asked me about like, oh, like what painting have you enjoyed so far, like from like this class, and I said that he was very shocked.
Like what about the painting do you like so much?
I guess just the shock factor of it all. When I saw it in person in London in the National Gallery, it's a very large painting,
Okay.
and it's on its own wall. So
Okay.
when you look at it, it's a very grand scale, and it's a horrific scene of a young girl who's about to be executed. Um, and there are her, I believe her like maids or what are those called, ladies in waiting, are they're in the corner, in this very clear distress about like her very imminent death. Um, and while it is morbid, like I find it so fascinating, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think like those dramatic pieces really are like some of the most interesting ones because
Mm,
there's so many layers going on just in the like in the painting, and it's
yes.
not just surface level like you said. Like it's not just okay, you see her ladies in waiting in distress, you see her about to be executed, you see the executioner, but it also typically like with a lot of paintings as we find in art history, there's a lot of hidden layers and like
Mm,
inferences. So whether it's references to other historical moments, references to philosophy, literature, morals, like there's a lot going on in paintings. And I think I wasn't something I was aware of until I studied art history. So like
mm.
it doesn't make I'm not shocked that like such a morbid, very dramatic scene was one of your favorite paintings because those are just some of like the best ones, honestly.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And like, okay, outside of art history, do you have like a favorite piece of like a painting that you just personally enjoy and you're like, I'd get that framed?
That's a good question. Probably like any of Monet's paintings, just because they're so pretty to look at. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, those are
Yeah.
I love impressionism. Like it's so beautiful.
Yes, I agree.
So, we're here today not just to talk about paintings, but we're here to talk about something specific.
Mm.
Specific.
Mhm. Mhm.
Pre-Raphaelites. Talk to me nice about it. Tell me what's going on. What's happening? what's the haps with these pre-Raphaelites? Like what's going on?
So the Pre-Raphaelites, they were this group of artists during the 1800s, during the Victorian era. Specifically, they were founded in 1848 by a group of young British painters who just wanted to go against the sort of like Royal Academy's like conventions of what art should be. It's
Right.
founded by three artists. Dante Gabriel Rossetti, William Holman Hunt, and John Everett Millay. Um, and oftentimes when I think when people start to look at their art, they often wonder where the name comes from, and why are they called the Pre-Raphaelites? Where does that what does Raphael have to do with any of this? And it ties
Right.
back again to their sort of ideals that they wanted to found this brotherhood on. They wanted to return to a form of art that was that predated like classical art, specifically like the greats like Raphael, Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo. Um,
Right.
why they focused on Raphael specifically, I'm not sure, but it
The name was cool.
the name was cool. It probably flowed the best, considering the other ones.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
So, like, one thing that I didn't know about, that I didn't really know about until studying art history, is like there's a lot of politics in art,
For sure.
especially like when you study it in like the 19th century,
Hmm.
like academies. So like let's really quickly just talk about like what the hell is an academy, because I like when I first heard the term academy, I was like what is this? There's at institutions of education,
Yes.
and I think that that's kind of, they're kind of like art schools,
Yes.
but
But
they were really strict
yes,
about,
about what art should be, what it should depict, who gets to make this
yeah,
art, and who gets to view it as
right.
well.
Yeah. And so like I know another thing too that we'll talk about later is a lot of these paintings by this artist collective, they were received with a lot of controversy and were met with a lot of critique. And so another part of like the academy is this idea of like the exhibitions that they did,
Hmm.
and like when all the art would be presented, because I think a lot of people forget too, like these paintings weren't done in 6 months. These were paintings that took
Years.
years,
Hmm.
and they required people to be commissioned. It was like a full-time career. And
Yeah.
I think for us in the contemporary, that's kind of a little hard to like understand,
Yeah.
but like art was really different in the 19th century in the way it was received and how important it was for society and like daily life.
Hmm.
And so like they had these, and like the other thing too with the exhibitions was like that's where all the rich people that were commissioning these artists, they'd go to look at these paintings,
Hmm.
because they're like, I bought this, basically,
Yeah.
like I want to see what did I get my money for.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right, like what did I pay for, do I like this? And so like that's another part too, is this component of class,
Yeah.
and like this idea of the painter and then the commissioner.
Mm.
So like there is this power dynamic, and then in the context of this is all happening in the academy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's something that I didn't understand until I started studying art history, and I was all, what the hell?
No.
Like who cares? Like okay, it's just your art school. But it's not,
It's so much more
just
than
your
that.
art school.
It really is so much more than that because yeah, like as you've been saying, like these academies have been controlling like for centuries, just like what art is, what art is, and what they believe it should be,
Right.
Yeah.
And especially like I think the context of the 19th century, especially like mid
Mhm.
19th century, is you've got a lot of political unrest happening
Yes.
in the greater continental Europe.
Yes.
There's a bunch of revolutions that have happened. England itself is currently being industrialized, so
Mm.
there's a lot of rapid change.
Yes.
There's a lot of class issues. We have this emergence of like a working class that is, like they're industrializing, and then you've got like this capitalist framework emerging. So like that's also kind of what's also happening during this time period as these painters are, studying.
Mm.
So you've got academy rigid amidst a lot of societal change.
Yes.
So like what were some of the controversies? Obviously going against the academy standards, but like what else specifically about these paintings were so controversial?
Well, sorry.
You're controversial on this podcast.
Sorry, man.
You're canceled. You are podcast canceled.
No.
I'm the Academy, okay? That's what they're saying. What?
You should be that should be the thumbnail.
Yeah. What?
So the controversy with these paintings oftentimes was the subject matter itself. Whenever they include religious figures within their paintings, apparently is seen as blasphemous. We can get into more of that later with a specific example, but they would also depict other controversial like social topics at the time, such as like prostitution, poverty, you know, double standards regarding like sexual morality, things like that, which at the time was pretty unfounded and definitely would have been controversial within the academy.
Okay, now let's get into let's get into some pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Pictures. Let's
Visual.
talk about it.
Yes.
Visual aids. Let's visually aid everywhere we go.
Mm-hmm.
Ophelia, what's happening? Why is she laying in the creek? What's going on?
So, Ophelia. This is a painting by John Everett Millais. It's a very, very well known painting, especially within British art. And this is referring to Ophelia, who was a character in the Shakespearean play Hamlet.
But like specifically about this painting, what makes it part of this movement?
Well,
let's formal analyze it.
Of course. I mean, once you take a look at this painting, you can very much see it's very, very vivid in color, especially the greens and just the rapid amount of detail. I believe this is it's a relatively big painting, I think, for if I remember correctly. So the amount of detail, well, it's not, no, it's like
It's regular, but
regular size, medium size. It's not a large one; it's a medium sized one. But
right.
if you were to take a look at this painting in person, I mean, the amount of detail in this is insane, especially for like I feel like just the size of it. The colors are just the very dramatic expression on her face. I mean, well, yeah, the sort of dramatic expression on her face as well.
And there's a lot of contrast with
Yes.
like the bright colors with the shadows.
Yes.
Like it's not, I don't want to, it's obviously not Baroque because we're not talking about that,
Mhm.
but like that dramatic contrast of like colors and shading,
Yes.
and then like the centrality of her, body in the middle of the painting. Like there's definitely really expressive, like your eyes are drawn to her
Immediately, yes.
yeah. Okay. And so like we can see this nature, we can see how this kind of landscape in the background, it's not organized, it's pretty disorganized. There's kind of like it looks real. It looks
Yes.
like an actual creek you'd find,
Yes.
There's nothing about it that's like, oh, I can see like a mathematical like approach to this. Like it's very, very real.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I could see how they were pretty pissed when they saw this. They're like, what the hell? And then like, okay, so I know another thing too is obviously this isn't just a painting of, okay, it's Ophelia, she killed herself and she's laying in, like her body's in the creek. Like what is like what do we think like the meaning behind this is? Like what do we think that he's trying to tell us?
I feel like within this painting, he's trying to convey just the tragedy of her death, how it was completely preventable, especially within the story, I believe. She is surrounded by, all this nature, and this sort of idea of nature can like sort of convey a sense of freedom. And we know that within Hamlet, she was very much controlled and constrained by the men in her life, and so like in death she's like sort of finally free from that.
And I also think like the really bright beautiful flowers, and also if you see in the bottom right corner there's like a flower crown.
Oh yes.
So it's kind of, I also feel like it's depicting her as an innocent figure. Like
yes.
she's not a like bad person, she's not this awful like representation of morals. She seems to be like a very morally upheld person.
Yes.
And she's fully clothed, like it's completely modest. And so I think it also depicts her as like this innocent individual. And like you said, it's this discussion of like women's roles and the patriarchy, and how for her freedom comes in death.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, we could it's kind of like a commentary on the treatment of women and how like women need to be free, and like there needs to be like a recognition of their, like autonomy and like
Mhm.
rationality in a sense.
Yeah.
So I could see how that would irritate people.
A
Yeah,
little
they're
bit.
like,
A little
women are not people. Okay, so we also briefly talked about religious scenes and how like these were often received as like blasphemous. So we have another painting from Malay, and this one is Christ in the house of his parents. So just really quickly, what about this depiction of Jesus as a child with Mary and Joseph? Like, what makes it controversial? Why would people be upset about
I
this?
think it's controversial because it's a rare depiction of Jesus Christ as being a human, you know?
Mm,
Um, Especially as a child too. Oftentimes within religious art, he's either depicted as, a baby, in the John and Child, or as an adult near the end of his life in crucifixion and death. So to see him as a child and just like in a completely sort of normal scene, this would be a normal day, like when he was growing up in Nazareth.
Nazareth.
Yes, when he was growing up in Nazareth, like completely normal. This was a completely like everyday normal scene where it's just like he's just a kid, and I feel
Yeah.
as though that would have been definitely very controversial to society at the time.
Yeah, like you said, I like that. Like it humanizes Jesus, and it also sees him as like in like a vulnerable state.
Yes.
Like children are vulnerable. Jesus was a human being.
Yeah.
He was hurt, and like his mother's doting on him, his father's doting on him. He has other people checking in on him. Like
Mhm.
it is like you said, this is a very day-to-day depiction of a kid getting hurt and parents and others checking in on them.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely I see the controversy of that as well. And then also like since it is Jesus, we can see the
Mata.
nail went through the palm, foreshadowing there's blood on his feet.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's that boy on the right side that kind of looks a little like timid and frightened and like a little fearful,
Mm-hmm.
almost like he knows what's going to happen to Jesus in the future. And then another painting that we mentioned, like a style, was the classics. So since the classics were already depicted typically in art according to the Royal Academy, what about this John William Waterhouse Ulysses and the Sirens? Like, what about this was controversial because it's classical. It seems to be like pretty straightforward, nothing crazy going on. Like, why was this controversial?
Well, yeah, this was controversial just because of the depiction of the sirens themselves. I think oftentimes when someone thinks of a siren, it's more of like a sort of sexualized like figure. It's not this sort of creature where this sort of like, horrifying creature of like a woman's head on a bird's body, like about to be like, "Caw!" like
That's
that is what
scary.
they actually are, of course, I think. But like,
It's not how people think of them or like know them. I think it's more like sirens get conflated with like this mermaid.
yes, I agree. Also, I think this is controversial because Ulysses was such a, quote unquote heroic figure. And in this
Right.
painting, he is very vulnerable right now. He's about to get like attacked.
You're right. Bro is strapped. He's holding on for dear life.
He's surrounded
He's
on
locked
all
in.
edges by all these sirens. Like,
Oh, ladies, please. It's enough
exactly,
for me to
one at a
go
time,
around.
one at a time.
One at a time, ladies. You're right. This is pretty vulnerable. And also, like, not only him being tied up, which is what actually happened in the epic,
Yep.
like, he actually was, like, tied to the boat
Yes.
with the earwax in his. Wait, was he? Did he put the earwax in,
Yes,
or
it
did
was
he have his
beeswax.
men?
He had, oh, no, he had his men put in beeswax, and then he was drawn by the sirens because of that, and he was like sort of the
Right,
bait.
right, because he wanted to get the knowledge from it.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So okay, so that also is vulnerable too because Ulysses or Odysseus, if you're nasty, Odysseus is like, he's this insanely heroic figure.
Mm-hmm.
And so to see somebody who's honestly like such a badass, literally vulnerable and like depending on his men, like that's not I think what they would have been like received as, oh, this is a strong man.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Like, this is freaky.
Yeah.
Like, this is so freaky. And then for like our last part of formal analysis, this is like a very typical art history staple.
Mm,
We got to do a comparison.
of course.
We got to compare.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
We got to compare. So let's get into this comparison. What are we comparing? Who
So
is it?
we are comparing two paintings. The first one will be Found by Dante Gabriel Rossetti, and then the second one is going to be The Awakening Conscience by William Holman Hunt. These two paintings are centered around women. With Found being about this woman and her former lover finding her. Um, and when he finds her, she is on the streets as a prostitute, and she's a very sickly, sickly, almost very ashamed expression on her face. Um, he's trying to hold her hands and, like, bring her home with him, and she's like, I don't know, like, don't
I'm not worthy of it.
know. Yeah. There's also, a lamb in the background that is has a net casted over it as well, to sort of depict, I guess, that lost innocence that she has.
Or even like this, like her innocence was kind of stolen,
Mm,
like taken
yes.
from her. Like
Yes.
society made her do this. Like, it's not her fault.
Yeah.
And she's not to blame because
Yeah.
she is like a lamb stuck in a net,
Yes.
you know?
Mm-hmm. So with the awakening conscience, we can sort of draw parallels to that sort of idea, I guess, being sort of trapped or by society, because we see in this painting that there's this woman who you can see in, like, the reflection of a mirror behind her. She's looking out towards a window, an open window, where there's, the outside and beautiful, like, nature. And she's sort of being held back by this guy, like, physically. She's, like, almost hurriedly standing up as if she wants to go and, like, go outside, but he's, like, sort of stopping her. And you can see down by, like, the bottom left corner, there is a cat playing with a bird. Or, well, not playing with the bird, but it's caught the bird in its claws, and that definitely is
He's the cat.
yeah. Yep.
Disgusting. Man, forget that guy. He's trash.
No, actually, no.
But like, yeah, she's kind of stuck and it's this predatory kind of relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's missing a wedding ring.
Oh yes.
So she's not married. This is likely like a mistress or his lover.
Mm.
And she, like you said, she's kind of like trapped inside. She's kind of treated like this bird in a cage for him and for his pleasure, for him to enjoy it. She's stuck with this guy. So these two paintings, they're different kind of like depictions of women.
Yes.
But I think like the message is the same.
I agree. Yeah, it definitely is a commentary on, like, freedom and personhood, especially as a woman within society. At the time, women didn't have, like, the choice of really much anything.
And these women are being depicted not in like a damning way. It doesn't blame the women, but it kind of blames society and men that kind of exploit and take advantage of these women.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for walking us through this group, the Pre-Raphaelites. Finally got it right. So to conclude, let's kind of like wrap up like the cultural and historical impact of this group, and like what would you say the legacy of this group was?
I would say the legacy of this group was definitely their bold, like, very rich, bold, like, realistic depictions of, like, landscapes and nature, and just of extraordinary, like, this idea of, like, vividness and sort of realness, I guess.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, like,
yeah.
They were not afraid of showing the problems within society and sort of just, like, they didn't idealize it or romanticize it. Like they were showing like, hey, this is a problem, and they were very committed to just like showing the sort of realism, regardless of whether or not it had to do with like religion or whatever. There was a strong sense of morality, I think, within their paintings that encouraged other artists to do the same.
Right.
Yeah.
And so with that, what do you think like their influences kind of are on art at the time, and like the perception of art, and just like later movements in the 19th and then even going into the 20th century?
I would say them going against academic conventions at the time and the very like stringent rules and sort of practices for paintings. I just completely forgot what I was saying.
No, it's all good. No, but like you're talking about the naturalism and how they're going against like the Academy's conventions, and they're kind of like almost like they're pushing the boundaries of
Yes.
what was acceptable and
Yes.
kind of expanding it.
Yes, completely. Yes, totally.
Yeah, so kind of like this more freedom of artistic expression,
Hmm.
and maybe like kind of setting the like starting the footsteps for others to follow. Do you
Yes.
think is an accurate description?
Yeah, I would say so.
What were some of like the later influences and then stuff like that?
I would say with like later groups, they would sort of continue this sort of rejection of like academic standards. The Pre-Raphaelites were just like one of many groups that, within the within the mid to late 19th century that like sort of pushed the boundaries of what art could be.
Right.
Um and ultimately this sort of paved the way for more modern and contemporary expressions within art, including the sort of all-out rejection of like naturalism and sort of an emphasis on like abstractness in the avant-garde, you know.
Right. Okay. Okay. So, all right.
No,
Pre-Raphaelites, controversial, impactful,
and very impactful, I'd say. Yes.
significant contributions to culture and society and art. Okay. Light work. Light work.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for walking us through the Pre-Raphaelites, having this conversation. I really appreciate it. Um,
Of course.
I Yeah, like thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This was something really new for me because I didn't really study a lot of like European art
Mm.
and like that very specific, like UK. Like you said, you took a British art class, so this is really cool to understand a little bit more of some of the other movements that happened that were really significant on
Yeah.
art and eventually led to like Picasso, like people like Picasso and like Warhol and stuff. Like
Mhm.
it is that
It
serious,
totally
you know?
really is. Of course. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, yes. But thank you so much, Kat, for joining
Of
us.
course. This is
This
super
was so
fun.
fun. Oh my gosh. What? What? Well, thank you for joining us. I hope you have a wonderful week.
Thank you.
I hope you keep pushing the boundaries of art
Oh my
and
God.
rejecting the Academy's conventions.
I will. Trust.
Yeah, you better. You better. All right. Bye. Thank
Of
you.
course.